What's interesting about Roswell, Georgia, is that it's followed a little bit of a different path of development historically than almost every other neighborhood around Atlanta that we've talked about here.
In Roswell, the Cherokee Nation has established local businesses. They've got farms. Some of them own slaves at this point.
Yeah, there's quite an advanced kind of economy. I think most people, when they think of Native Americans, would be surprised.
Yeah, they even have a written language. They have their own newspaper, the Cherokee Phoenix.
Yeah, I think you have this Indian Removal Act. And then almost immediately, you see European American investment kind of coming in and taking over.
Yeah, and that really starts and ends at the same location that probably attracted the Cherokee Nation to this land, and that's the Chattahoochee River.
Most people, when they think of historic Roswell, specifically think of Canton Street,
which looks like a picture-perfect suburban downtown.
That's a lot of stuff to happen over a 30-year period. Hello, everyone. Welcome to ATL All Things Local. Today, we are taking a trip to New Mexico.
Jeff, we're not going to New Mexico.
I thought we were doing Roswell today.
Oh, yes, we are doing Roswell.
That took you way too long, man.
Man, I did not think about there being two Roswells.
Yeah.
I've been honed in on Roswell, Georgia.
You probably didn't even think of the alien connection.
That is, yeah. Aliens are from Roswell, Georgia.
There's a lot from Roswell, but it's very different than Roswell, New Mexico.
Yes, except for Native Americans, right?
Yeah, we had the Cherokee Nation there until a bunch of people kicked them out.
I don't think the Cherokee Nation was in New Mexico.
No, in Roswell, Georgia.
Yes, but they were in Roswell, Georgia. Yeah.
And what's interesting about Roswell, Georgia, is that it's followed a little bit of a different path of development historically than almost every other neighborhood around Atlanta that we've talked about here, because it didn't really totally be controlled by the railroad or the highway.
I know. Isn't it a breath of fresh air that it's not, a railroad neighborhood?
Or a freeway neighborhood.
Yeah, but it's freaking brutal. Their past is really dark.
Yeah, and it kind of a lot of getting through it, surviving kind of.
Yeah, enduring or walking back from Indiana. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Well, yeah, let's start off. European settlers arrived here. It was Cherokee land, right? And which is unique because that's kind of south for Cherokee. When I always think about Cherokee, I think of North Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. Western North Carolina.
Yeah, because they were more of the Appalachian. And then the Creek or the Muskogee, I guess is what they were called, the woodland. I feel like that's more middle Georgia, the Creek Indians, which we see a lot here in Atlanta, being a little bit south of that. Yes, so originally it was a Cherokee Nation land. You get to 1830s, and that is when the Indian Removal Act is put in place, and the government is saying you've got to leave, right?
And forcibly removing people.
Yeah, and mind you, this is a dark spot in history. This is the Trail of Tears and those things, but also it's not like they are creating genocide of Native people the way we like to think about them. I mean, in Roswell, the Cherokee Nation has established local businesses. They've got farms. Some of them own slaves at this point.
Yeah, there's quite an advanced kind of economy, if you want to think of it that way, that I think most people, when they think of Native Americans, would be surprised.
Yeah, they even have a written language. They have their own newspaper that was first pressed in 1828 called the Cherokee Phoenix. And so, you look at these, in some of the pictures of these the tribe leaders are in suits. And you're like, wow, that's crazy. And maybe it's a painting or not a picture, but at that time. And then you have early settlers, and it's like almost automatic.
Well, yeah, I think the interesting thing about Roswell is you have this Indian Removal Act, and then almost immediately you see the European American investment kind of coming in and taking over.
Yeah, and that really starts and ends at the same location that probably attracted the Cherokee Nation to this land, and that's the Chattahoochee River. I mean, that's the reason
Vickery Creek specifically.
Specifically Vickery Creek. I mean, that is where the founder of the Roswell Manufacturing Company and the namesake of Roswell King, saw a lot of potential.
Yeah. And I often wonder about that because you see the Sweetwater Creek has that big mill down there as well. I'm curious if creeks back then were just maybe easier to harness the energy from, because it seems like we see a lot of mills on creeks, like big creeks. creeks that you might say, is that a river or a creek? I mean, they're not little bitty creek.
Yeah. And I think, harnessing the hydroelectricity of the mill was something that was maybe already in play, because the wooden mill itself only lasted 10 years or less, I want to say, when looking back, and they had already updated it to steel or something like that. But it was a manufacturing company, and it had textiles. It is most famous for helping the Confederate Army, and
which is an interesting point when we get into some of the other history that happened there. And what did they make for the Confederate war effort?
So my research of this found that they called it Roswell gray fabric. And if you remember, the Confederate soldiers had gray uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of their uniforms were produced here. Now, mind you, Georgia is one of the top producers of cotton at the time. They also produced flour at this mill, and they produced wool as well, right? So those were kind of the leading industries. But, if you know anything about Atlanta and the Civil War, you know that it has a fiery, bloody ending. Roswell is no different, and Roswell was a very strategic asset attack.
Well, what's interesting about Roswell and Sherman's March and the burning of Atlanta and all of that is that there are, for a relatively small portion of greater Atlanta, Roswell, there are a lot of pre-Civil War homes that are still around.
Yes, there are. And that's the unique part about it, right? Sherman here in Atlanta didn't leave any homes.
It's really rare to find a pre-1865 home here.
Yeah, we talk about LP Grant's mansion and things like that. But a lot of the antebellum homes in Roswell are still there. These neoclassical Greek revival style homes. One of them being very famous, that would be the Bullock Hall.
And who grew up there, Mincy?
It was a woman who birthed one of an influential president in our history, and that would be Mitty.
Well, Mitty was the mom, and Teddy was the son.
Teddy Roosevelt. That's correct. Yes. Mitty, Theodore Roosevelt's mom, lived in Bullock Hall, which is still a home that still exists today and is owned by the city. And we'll get into this shortly, but a lot of things are owned by the city of Roswell.
Yeah.
So yes. So bring it back to the Civil War. Sherman came in and strategically targeted the mill. They saw that as a resource for the Confederate soldiers and their army. And they did something kind of bizarre. They arrested over 400 mill workers.
Mainly women and children.
These are women and children, right? Because the husbands are out fighting the war.
Mm-hmm.
And they put them in a boxcar, arrested them on treason.
And the treason part was what was interesting to me, because you don't hear a lot of stories when you're living in Atlanta, hearing the history about the Civil War. You hear about things getting burned and it was awful, but you don't hear about people getting put in boxcars. That sounds like something you would hear out of World War II Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why this one kind of sticks out as very interesting. And I'm curious if the treason accusations were because of this Roswell Gray and the fact that maybe they looked at it more like a military production facility or something.
Or could it be that they tried a little trick before Sherman got there and flew a French flag above the mill? So I don't know. But, they get the women and children get put on this train and they get shipped up to Kentucky and Indiana. And a lot of them, because of their lack of resources, never made it home.
Mm-hmm.
But there is one story of a woman who was pregnant at the time that she got put on the train, and she took her 5 years to get back to Georgia.
Well, it's all downhill.
Well, that's the way it looks on a map, sure. But 5 years to get back to Georgia, and when she got back, her husband had remarried because he thought she had passed.
So did he have two wives now?
That's where I left the story, but I don't know. I mean, that's a good. There was therapy involved. I'm sure. That was actually the birth of therapy.
Modern therapy started in Roswell, Georgia. Well, one thing that's interesting is that the Native Americans were forced out 1830 or so. By the end of that decade, we had this big mill operation going, and within 2.5 decades, 3 decades, like between now and what was the 90s. which doesn't seem that long ago. You had this major transition into, you actually literally went from having Native Americans living there to having a war party from your own country coming and burning everything down. Like, that's a lot of stuff to happen over a 30-year period.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so part of what really impresses me is how much happened in a relatively short amount of time. And it's not like they can go on Amazon and order that part they need for the mill and all. It was a big to do, making what you need and all of that.
Yeah. But the mill did make it back in production, and it stayed in production all the way until, I think, the mid 70s.
Yeah. I wonder what they were making in the 70s.
Oh, I don't know.
But the interesting thing about the 70s is that that's when Georgia 400 came into place and kind of got Roswell caught up with the rest of Metro Atlanta in terms of being defined by transportation.
Yeah, and that happened in the 70s, but there was a strategic move back in 1932 that Roswell moved from Cobb County and got annexed into Fulton County.
And we've seen this similar pattern in other suburbs of Atlanta. I think it was Alpharetta,
which is the neighbor to Roswell.
And these areas were really suffering from the Great Depression.
That's right.
Their municipalities didn't have any money, and they basically said, we give up. We'll just can't beat them, join them kind of thing. I guess, right?
And they looked to the bigger city, Atlanta, to help fund some of their infrastructure, right? And so the infrastructure in the Interstate Act of the 60s and Georgia 400 made this a perfect landing spot for a lot of people who were looking to get out of the city during the suburban sprawl.
Well, you did have the traditional post-war boom. I think, though, Roswell was still a little bit insulated.
It was.
Because they didn't have the freeways. They didn't have a railroad going through it. But you still find a lot of those post-war houses in and around Roswell.
Yeah, you definitely do. And one of the things that you really find, as you do across the United States in general, is that 1950s hipped roof, brick ranch, and then the 1960s and 70s split levels.
Yeah, Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch. You see a lot of that around Roswell, but it really wasn't until, like you said, the Interstate 400, made that perfect landing spot for it.
I'm curious about it because it is Georgia 400. I'm not sure if they even got funds from the Interstate Act. Maybe it was just because all of the interstate stuff was happening.
Yeah, it could just be, benefit because you were sitting right there.
And Georgia 400 still boggles the mind that they were able to do the eminent domain from 285 down to the connector to actually extend it southward through these really affluent neighborhoods. It was hard enough to go through non-affluent neighborhoods for 485 that finally got stopped. But even in the late 80s and 90s, they were able to carve essentially a canyon through North Atlanta to extend Georgia 400, which really put 400 on steroids. You no longer had to go around 285. For those of you that haven't lived in Atlanta, to know what it was like when 400 ended at 285, it really changed how people got around.
Yeah, it did. And it really changed how tractor trailers were not allowed to go into the connector unless they had an in-town delivery.
You rarely see them on the roads.
That's right.
Unless you see them pulled over for violating that. Yeah.
It is the roundabout to get in the bypass of Atlanta for truckers heading south. But again, Roswell, based off the Chattahoochee, it has had a lot of development and it has had a lot of planned strategic development by the city. I hinted at this earlier, but Roswell has, maybe you call it strategic affluence. It's
well, most people, when they think of historic Roswell, specifically think of Canton Street,
the downtown area of Canton Street, which looks like a picture perfect suburban downtown.
And yeah, it does. You don't have tall buildings. It's walkable, nice restaurants.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of preservation.
There has, and they're very strict about what goes in, and also about density. They had recently.
Well, how do you like? I feel like there have been historic, not just recently, but over the last century and a half, there's been some level of this preservation mindset that Roswell has had. And now today, when you hear things like that, you hear the word NIMBY thrown around.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of this whole not in my backyard thing has taken on its own kind of cultural phenomenon. However, before the word NIMBY was ever thrown around, it seems like you had people being very protective of Roswell.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Roswell has always been a destination for, people who were seeking safety and seeking, picture perfect American dream place to live. I think when I was in high school, I remember it being awarded the top 10 safest communities in America or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And they wore that badge with honor, right?
Yeah.
But, they also have a lot of infrastructure that is a little progressive. It's one of those places where I don't know exactly what this is called, but they're putting it in place, and they've got like $160 million investment in their old precinct, the police building, where they're doing ground lease and retaining that money. And they also have something called wasn't really familiar with this in commercial real estate, but a pilot payment.
In lieu of taxes.
In lieu of taxes, that's right. So it's almost like what I think of as like an ad valorem tax, maybe like a pay forward instead, so get the money now sort of thing. But they do like a zero budgeting or zero based budgeting, and it's to kind of justify all this spending that they have. And then,
but there's controversy around that too with people, or I don't know what side of the debate's right or wrong or whatever, but it seems like some of the politicians were blamed for falsifying records in order to keep the budget balanced.
Yeah. Well, and
however that worked out, it doesn't sound good.
Yeah, and they've got this comprehensive growth plan is what it's called, and it's a 2045 comprehensive growth plan. It has a lot of expansion. It's got very futuristic things. Vertiport is that what it's called? A vertiport?
Short takeoff and landing kind of.
Yeah.
Aero.
I had not heard of that. So it looks like it's like a helicopter pad, but it's got like a little waiting room.
Yeah. There are some aerospace companies east of Atlanta toward Madison and that area. Out past Conyers, kind of between Conyers and Madison. Maybe it's Morgan County, I think. Archer Aerospace, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. They're focusing on the electric vertical takeoff and landing.
Interesting.
I just want one. I don't know where I'd land it around here, but I guess you have to go to a vertiport.
Yeah, well, apparently Roswell's already put some of this into legislation, and they are strategically working to be and want to be the first city in Georgia with a vertiport. So, you think this place is 20 miles north of the city. And
I mean, if you get in a traffic jam in one of those helicopters, I mean, do you worry that your battery's going to run out while you're waiting in line, or do you just fly around everybody?
I don't know. I guess I'd have the same fear in a Waymo today. I mean, right? But so, okay. And back to this master plan, it also includes a lot of growth around the Chattahoochee. You've got A Sand Park, Don White Memorial Park, and Riverside Park, all undergoing roughly $20 million combined.
Is that Riverside Park, the River Walk?
Yeah.
A lot of times I give Atlanta a hard time for having this great water feature, the Chattahoochee River, and not doing anything with it. It kind of feels like after the great Chattahoochee River raft race was shut down, that was the last time you heard about the Chattahoochee, really, in terms of things happening or things to do. But you go just north to Roswell, and you can shoot the hooch, and you can, take your canoes and kayaks, and then what else can you? I mean, there's just a lot to do there, and the city seems centered around the water, and that feels like the only place around Atlanta where that's the case.
I think there is something special about the water there. It's like, not only does it have the Cherokee Nation like sought after, and then obviously industrial sought after it as well, but when you go and visit the Chattahoochee there, it does feel cleaner and like fresher than when you get down to.
It hasn't passed Fulton Industrial yet.
Yeah, maybe that's the textiles started there for a reason, right? It's like after that, it wasn't great, but yeah, I mean, I used to spend a lot of time out there.
It's nice to see people being able to live and take advantage of the Chattahoochee, and it's really hard to do if you live in town.
So let's pivot here a little bit. We did hint at Canton Street, but I don't think we really did it justice about talking about the nightlife there. So we talked about how Roswell is very strategic with a lot of their planning and zoning. They're also strategic with legislation. They have a open carry, which is you often say that in Georgia, and you think of guns.
But this is for beverages?
This is for alcoholic beverages. You can go up and down Canton Street.
Well, you can carry your gun and your Budweiser.
Probably could.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is to get people to linger.
Linger longer.
Linger longer and spend more time on Canton Street, which
spend more money.
Creates more money.
Tax revenue
and all these things. But they did, we were talking about this development they're putting in at the old the headquarters for their police department. That is a land lease. That was originally supposed to have hundreds of apartments, condos, that sort of thing. And they slashed that. And they made it more commercial. And I want to say there's like 30 residents, maybe less.
So density is not their highest priority.
No. They want controlled, amount of density. But they also want people to linger who have a little bit deeper pockets.
Right.
They're going to spend the money, right? So it's very, very thought through in all of these things. And that's really, I think, what we try to hint at when we're saying these things about Roswell. I mean, if you look at median income of Roswell,
it's pretty high.
It's $125,000 almost, right? It's $124,000.
You're not going to get any of those mortgages where you have to be 85% of the area median.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess you can actually. A lot more people could.
Yeah. Well, you would meet that. You would meet that. It would be the opposite. You would meet that very quickly. Yeah. But the demographics might not be there to support it, right?
Right. You got to afford the property, though.
Yes.
And there's been 100% appreciation over the last 10 years.
That's crazy. Yeah. And you said you did the math on that. That's a compound.
Yeah. Even if it was on an annual basis, that's 7.5% or so. That's double what we would normally expect. And even if you throw in a couple years at 20% near the pandemic, that still pushes it higher than average.
Yeah.
The rest of those years. So a lot of desire to live there.
Yeah. And let's put this in perspective. So median household, we said 124,000. Median household for Metro Atlanta, 86. Georgia, 74. So almost, you just start looking at almost double.
40%.
Yeah, 40%. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting also is that they're a part of Fulton County schools, but Roswell has its own police and fire, I believe.
That's right. Yeah. And they even have like a plan in place where they're putting in cameras almost at every single intersection.
Is that just to gain revenue from tickets or
something? No, it's supposedly supposed to cut down on the first responder time. So they can pinpoint exactly where issues are happening, where they're moving, those sort of things. Yeah.
Sounds like Big Brother to me, man.
Well, Atlanta is the number one Big Brother city in the U.S.
I think. There's so many cameras now, and I'm kind of surprised because when cameras first started being put on the streets, there was kind of this hum around the community of that's not going to fly. I don't like it, all of that. And now it just seems like since everybody has a camera in their pocket every day now with their phone, I think people are just like, whatever.
Yeah.
What is surprising?
Yeah. Well, so obviously we're talked about the demographics there. Taking a snapshot, we touched on this. They've had a lot of equity growth. The median sales price in Roswell is $730,000.
So that's a good bit higher than Metro average or Metro median.
Yeah, it is. It is higher. And then, it's a pretty competitive. You get about two, I think they average like 2 offers per home, per listing. They have started seeing a little bit more market, days on market, but what?
Yeah, everybody has.
What market hasn't? Architectural profile, we talked about the brick ranches and the split levels. We did say they've got some of those earlier Greek revivals. A lot of those have been purchased by the city. There's still some out there, and there's still some privately owned.
And you got a ton of 2-story brick traditional homes built in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, you do. You've got a lot of swim and tennis communities that you could choose from. And especially the more you move up towards the north side, towards Milton and Crabapple area, But there's also a strong market for, the contemporary modern farmhouse style, the neoclassicals, things like that.
So if I wanted to just get into the market, say a mid-century ranch, I don't have a ton of money, I'm just looking for the most affordable thing out there. What's my entry point to Roswell?
I mean, you're still going to be 5, plus, depending on finishes. It would be probably, depending on finishes, between 5 and 7.
Mm-hmm. So if you look at the average kind of mortgage with a typical down payment and all of that, that's doable for a median family income. That's as high as Roswell has.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have a bunch of other debt, but you could probably still get a mortgage.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. If you like Southern cuisine and you want a nice fancy dinner,
where do I go?
Table and Main is probably Austero Matrone. And then there's a couple other like local spots. There's the Irish pub back McGee's or whatever. I've been there a couple times.
Yeah, with the red facade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty notable building. They've got that like wine tasting shop across the street too. That's pretty nice.
So you can just get loaded in Roswell.
Well, you can, and you could take it to go. Because of the, you can do more than that. Gate City Brewery is also a very popular one. That's the one that kind of has they've got a back, you kind of go around behind Canton Street, right where I think there's like an antique spot where you park.
What about the Voodoo Brewing?
I've never been to Voodoo. I haven't.
So they've got a good number of breweries, established pubs, restaurants.
Variant's another brewery that's pretty popular.
It's really cool to go down there, walk around. A lot of the old homes have been turned into businesses, like the historic homes there.
Yeah.
So it has a really nice vibe. Instead of having, say, a 2 or 3 story medical building like you would see built now, you've got the dentist in the old 3-bedroom house, right?
Yeah.
It's nice.
And if you drive up and down Canton Street, you can tell it's a nice area. It's also, and I'm surprised they haven't done this yet. At one point, they were trying to close it off to cars anyway. So it's kind of surprising to me that they haven't done that yet.
They've been through a lot. They charted a slightly different course than a lot of the cities and towns and areas that we cover on the show.
Yeah.
They weren't defined by the railroad or the interstate. You can still get there really quickly from downtown. When Roswell became 20 minutes from downtown, that really changed stuff.
Yeah, it did. It did. And I think the cool thing about Roswell is it is very forward thinking. We talked about the large investment in the parks. That also is, the connectivity that people want today. So a lot of times people say, we want more walkability. We want more connectivity. While the density isn't necessarily happening, those bike lanes are getting wider for e-bikes and things like that, where you could put a stroller or a carrier on the back of it and get to downtown Roswell. Like, it wants community, and it has a strong sense of community, and it has good schools.
And
so
I think maybe we're seeing that because Roswell is smaller, say, than Atlanta. And maybe it's easier to manage. You have fewer interests and people to appease and convince and all of that to do something. I mean, obviously, Roswell has a lot of people arguing about a lot of things in terms of development and how the budget works and all of that. But they've been able to complete a lot of things that are really good social investments that make it a great place to live.
Yeah, and it is a great place to live because it's not too small as well, right? It's the 3rd largest city in Metro Atlanta.
There are a lot of corporations there, lots of healthcare there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of different industries there, and a lot of tech, right around the corner as well. So, it's a great place to live. This is why we do the show. If you are interested in any home in Roswell or surrounding areas, I'm Adam Mincy, a local real estate broker, and I'm here to help you with that. If you're looking for funding,
if you need money, come to me and Jasmine. We can help you get a mortgage so that you can buy the home that Mincy sets up for you. And we'd love to chat with anyone about Atlanta, different neighborhoods, show you guys around, and hopefully see you in person soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening.